And we're live.
Ladies, oh great. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 7th webinar at Citation Labs. Very excited today to be presenting on Agency Hacks 2. Agency Hacks 1 was one of our most popular webinars, and we're continuing with teaching what we've learned, the tricks we've learned. This one in particular is on planning to kick $, which we all want to do. And we're going to talk a little bit, or a lot of it today, about how we plan for success. In particular, we're going to be discussing content calendars, or work calendars and task workflows, because that has proven to be for us one of the core advantages or core areas of growth and development that we've had to learn and focus on over the past year and a half as we've grown. And so let's dig in. Here are our goals for today. So we want to talk about our teamwork hacks, defined roles, seasonal planning, that kind of thing. We want to inspire you to experiment. And yes, it's funny and a little bit oxymoronic, but you do sometimes have to plan to improvise. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. I definitely want to prepare everyone for bottlenecks and how to break through those, or basically how to identify them ahead of time. It can be one of the most painful aspects of link building really at any kind of scale, but unforeseen approvals, unforeseen bottlenecks. So we'll talk through some of what we've found has been helpful in breaking through these sorts of things. And then, of course, we have a secret hack at the end. You will have to stick around to find out what that hack is. Megan, can you let folks know how they can get in touch with us during this webinar?
Sure, yeah. So there's a couple of ways. There's the Q&A is enabled with Google Hangouts. So if you have a question, you can just ask right through Google Hangouts, or if you want to use Twitter, we're at Citation Labs or hashtag Citation Labs chat, and you can tweet us a question. We'll answer them. I'll relay them to Garrett throughout the webinar, and we'll answer them. So if you have any questions related to any of our hacks, or just kind of any agency hacks related question in general, we'll get to it. So
we'd love to hear from you, folks. All right, so I'm going to jump right in here into hack number 1. We clearly define roles. Now, I will say we sometimes share roles, but we clearly define roles. And what I mean is sometimes, I primarily, we're going to introduce the roles here soon. I primarily play the role on our agency side of things as the link strategist for our clients. But sometimes I'll do some content design or content thinking. Also, I tend to do the majority of the prospecting as well. And so I kind of bleed those two roles together. But there is an importance and a value in kind of separating them and acknowledging and identifying the different tasks that each role requires. I'll also say you can and should potentially be doing all of these yourself. The advantage to doing every role yourself is that you will end up being better able to train people. Now, contact finding obviously isn't the most fun thing to do, but there are some important aspects of it. For example, finding the contact information that's as closely related to the target page as possible, right? So you don't necessarily just want to have someone go to Whois and pull the Whois owner for the website. You want to look at the page you're targeting, or the section of the website you're targeting, for example, and look for the contact information that's most associated with that particular page. So there are some aspects of even contact finding that if you are, if you're doing all of these and learning all of these roles, that you will end up being able to better train people and really know how to do each thing. So let's dig in now, folks. Here's how we think about the different roles in a link building process or a link building project. And again, we are sort of thinking about this, I guess more or less from an enterprise level. So thinking about it, if you've got a team of 3 to 5 people, maybe, I hope more, but it could be that many, who are going to be really concentrated on link building. You can't, again, all of these roles can be done by one person, and I would say they have been done by one person. Me, I've done all of them and have been on the doing side of all of these roles throughout the growth of Citation Labs. But here, all that said, I'm going to read through these quickly. Links, well, you can read them, but link strategist, the actual who's kind of the thinker, or the one who's kind of coming up with everything. Actually, you know what? I'm going to try. So we have some new and lovely slides by Megan. We're working on more images and that sort of thing. So I'm going to step out here and just leap into the next slide. The link strategist. Okay, folks, this is the role that I have found myself playing primarily with clients. So it's sort of the person who comes up with what to do. What are we going to do? This person has to know what opportunities exist, what kinds of link opportunities exist. They need to know what kinds of assets are available, both potential assets, meaning resources that we have this many people to write this many articles for us, or we have this much development time to try and execute on this. So the link, and then also further, the link strategist knows and has the capacity to say, all right, what does link opportunity volume look like? What are my estimates here for link opportunity volume? Oh, we've got 20 people who might link to this particular document. Oh, we've got 20,000 who might potentially link to this particular document. So that's that, and that kind of knowledge is what the link strategist really has to specialize in, and they're the ones saying, all right, here's what we're going to try to do. And the link strategist really needs to be involved throughout at every role, not deeply closely involved, but at least in particular needs to know, once you've gotten all the way through to outreach, what some of the outcomes have been. How are people responding? What are people saying when we're asking them to share something or asking their opinion about something? What kinds of, are we on point with the content we're pitching? So the link strategist really has to have their finger on the entire pulse of the campaign, but is also the one that sort of brainstorms the initial campaign itself, right? And a lot of that is understanding goals of the client site, or whichever site you're working on, understanding how that site plans to use links to support their business. What are we trying to accomplish here in our link building efforts? And so the strategist needs to sort of hold all those things at one time and come up with what to do in order to make those things happen. So we do think quite a lot about the link strategist. I think we're going to have an article coming out in the next couple months on just that link strategist role, and really kind of knuckling down on it and kind of walking folks through. But at the core, that's kind of what the link strategist does, is understand the existing website, what is linkable about it, understanding the existing available resources for making linkable assets, and then also knowing what the opportunity volume looks like out on the internet. To whom are we going to be pitching these things, and do we have enough supporting opportunities to justify a potential direction or a potential campaign? So pretty simple, really. Then we have next up, we have the link prospector and qualifier. So I do, again, for Citation Labs on the agency side, I do all of the link prospecting. With our link prospector, our broken link finder, and also our lovely nifty co-citation analysis tool that is free, and we could probably link to it from someplace, perhaps in this article that is associated with this. I use those 3 tools for link prospecting, and this is just what it sounds like. You're really looking for link opportunities or pages that would potentially link to your content, to the document you've created specifically for this for a campaign. So that can mean a lot of different types of things. So the prospector is someone who really at their core is highly capable of searching Google. I know that sounds like it may not be a particularly difficult thing to do, but searching Google at some scale and with specificity, the specificity required to bring back really useful results takes some learning, takes some skill. We've actually taken it pretty far to the point of actually doing sales lead prospecting for some B2B clients, which is obviously very different from how or how people typically think of link building, except it isn't, in that we're people talk about link building and relationship building, and there is a point where when you're prospecting, you can find potential business opportunities or potential business partners, and it's not good. It shouldn't be the link builder who's reaching out in these cases, but the link builder should be someone who has the capacity to say, all right, we can find just about any type of opportunity on the internet, all right, that exists, that Google has indexed. We can find that opportunity if we can clearly define that opportunity. So certainly this is someone who obviously knows how to use the link prospector, but then also even more importantly, knows how to use Google really well with advanced operators, with understanding opportunity footprints, what an opportunity actually looks like when it exists on a page. So that's kind of some of the aspects of what the link prospector does. Again, I think we're going to probably need standalone webinars for each of these that we've talked about so far, and then let's talk next about the content creator. So the content creator is often either doing some internally we call it content specking, and this is where either I or someone on the overall operations team has identified a topic that we think could be effective, and then is trying to marry that topic with a client's sort of area of interest or area of focus. But the content creator is typically the one taking that spec. Alternately, that person could be creating the spec itself. And we've had I think maybe a couple webinars on this, on just thinking clearly about content topics that will be linkable, and that kind of work that kind of thinking that we've outlined in previous webinars would. I think of it more as a link strategist and kind of the link prospector type work, because when you're prospecting, you're also seeing new directions new topics that you may not have previously thought of, which is why in our company, I cling tightly to the link prospecting role, because that's where I get so many ideas, is when I'm actually out in the muck, in the mire of potential prospects, and saying, oh, this query wasn't quite right, but I do see that we could take the topic in a different direction. And so that's where a lot of ideas come from for me and my work. And so I think it's fairly common at agencies or in in larger companies that do link building at some scale, for the prospecting to be sort of passed off to interns, or perhaps to cheaper labor overseas. But it's not something that should be strictly executed that way, because you will find formerly unthought of content directions, gaps in the content ecosystem that you can potentially fill and build some links to. So I think that it's I consider it a vital role for someone who is a little higher up more at the strategy level to be thinking about. Certainly, if you have a content team, most of the companies we work with have even enormous content teams in some cases, 20, 30 writers. That the editorial director can and should be involved to some extent when it comes to what kinds of topics and what types of or what characteristics of content are linkable. So the content creator can and should be involved at even in conversations at the strategy level, but anyhow, that at the end of the day, you need somebody to write something typically, or create something, and so the content creator is the one to whom you're passing a spec to actually execute something. Then we move to the a bit less glamorous but absolutely necessary role of contact finding. Now, the scale at which you're executing will kind of determine whether this is a small job or a big job. We have moved away from strictly machine-based contact finding. We don't trust Whois we don't mail to Whois data ever. We're looking very closely on the page that we're interested in, or in the category where that page lives. We're just, I don't trust Whois data at all. So we have a human team that does our contact finding right now. We have a tool that's still in the works that will be kind of a human assisted. But we believe at Citation Labs that contact finding should be a human executed task. It's boring. It's really boring, but it is an absolute necessity, because I mean, no matter how much strategy you have, no matter how good your ideas are, if you don't have the emails to send, if you don't have an email address, you don't have any you're not going to get any links. Now, this is contrary. This is a philosophical position. There are people who have the position that if you're creating the right content, that it will get links kind of organically or naturally, which can and does happen. But so we're talking about accelerated. If you want kind of accelerated link earning, you need to be promoting and kind of getting the word out about your content. You gotta be publicizing it a bit in individual inboxes, and that requires contact finding. Then, of course, we need an outreach manager, and this is the person who makes sure those emails actually go out. So, and then this person also can kind of close loops in terms of what kinds of responses are we getting from potential linkers, and this is where you're going to learn some of get some of your most important data back in terms of what content types are the most needed by our linkers, by the people we're trying to earn links from. What do they care about? What do they want to see more of? Are we targeting the right audience when we're pitching to these linkers? Or do they value the audience the way we thought they did? That sort of thing. So this person also is, again, as in terms of necessity to the company, or to the operation, the overall operation is just absolutely vital. This is the person who makes sure those emails actually end up in inboxes, because if not, again, you're not going to get links. At least at an accelerated rate. All right, folks. So that's, broadly speaking, our how we have defined roles. Again, internally at Citation Labs, our outreach manager is often involved in content design. Let's see. I guess that's probably one of the more definite role, and then our content creators are often involved at the kind of link strategy stage, and then I get to be the link prospector, and I absolutely love it. But that then feeds the link strategy work, and then also the content creation that we end up doing. So yeah, that's kind of in a nutshell how we've broken out roles internally, how we think about the roles. And the reason why we call this a hack is because people don't usually do this. What we often see is that people are, basically link building gets passed off to the SEO team, And the SEO team they're sort of expected to build links in some sort of magical vacuum, this magical link vacuum, and it's just get us links. And that's a frustrating and difficult place to be. And so this is our offer to that poor soul who has been sort of dropped in that position, is think, go back to your boss and let them know you're going to need a team, that you're going to be the link strategist, but you're going to need some support. So that's sort of our vision for why we're calling this a hack. So hack number 2. All right, folks, seasons change. Seasons change. We use them. We use the seasons in our outreach and in our content. So seasonality helps you brainstorm. Here in the US right now, we're having, at least on the East Coast, we're having sort of record rainfall and lots and lots of thunderstorms. With that rainfall has come flash flooding. So this is a time where flash flooding related or severe thunderstorm related content is at the top of mind for lots of, whether you have a blog or whether you think of your audience, whether you're a blogger or a links page curator, you are concerned about these types of things because they're happening. We're reading about them in the news all the time. So with a calendar in place or some kind of process in place for thinking about what kinds of content to be creating, you can better prepare yourself for the seasonality effect, right? You can earn more links when you have seasonal content. If we were out pitching, content on how to stay warm in the winter, or what have you, how to save money on your heating costs, we would be falling on our faces with that particular kind of content. Now, the content, we do talk a lot about evergreen, high utility content. So I think to better define it, it's when seasonal content is still essentially evergreen, in that the advice for that season isn't likely to change much, but there is a seasonality to when you can pitch it.
And Garrett, also, I would add that it's not just about weather, it's also about like awareness weeks and awareness months when you come into mission-based content.
Thank you. Absolutely. So any kind of, Alzheimer's awareness, or any kind of awareness week that's going on. Ken McGaffin has spoken in the past about utilizing these kinds of awareness weeks when doing press-related outreach. And so we sort of incorporated that into our link building methods, and it's proven to be quite effective. So this actually plays into outreach. So when you're connecting with people now in your initial email, you're mentioning something that's going on in the news, or you're mentioning some kind of awareness week. And so now you're connecting with the broader world in a more meaningful way, rather than, hey, we've got a great piece of content. You start with, hey, this is really been a tough season for flooding this year. Goodness gracious. So you can kind of use that as a starting point for a conversation that makes the content that you're pitching feel more meaningful or timely, certainly. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely, Megan. It's not just the weather. It is absolutely whatever happens to be going on in that season, or is important on that day or week, because there are some in the US and I think worldwide kind of awareness days, weeks, and months. So here's another example on kind of planning for seasons. So there, I guess two here. Great summer jobs for retirees. This is a kind of piece that captures that seasonal essence and is for a linker valued audience. So seniors, obviously, we've found them to be an audience that linkers, or a large portion or a large number of linkers, values highly. and when you're creating content for them that in some way could intersect with your company or your business, then you are you're going to find it easier to get links. This particular example, though, brings seasonality into the equation, and you'll find that with a piece like this, that you're better able to get links that are very seasonal. I think this piece would also work well as a supporting resource in if you wanted to do a targeted guest posting campaign, for example. You could definitely do a series of articles on summer jobs for seniors, and then kind of cite back to this guide as a resource if you were using this as an anchor for a campaign. So it could be supported in a couple different tactics: links, page outreach, and guest posting, possibly even kind of trying to tie in some local publicity. If you had some local seniors who could talk about the jobs they'd gotten, and pitch that to local reporters, you could potentially build a story out of it as well. So here's another. Oh, this is one of my favorites. Is when you have planned it well enough, you can be spontaneous. So basically, when you have your roles really well defined, and you can kind of press pause on your standard activities, when there is an event that occurs, you can respond to some extent in your outreach, and kind of use that event as or that happening as a entry into a conversation. We call it email justification. Why are you in my inbox? As sort of a justification point for your outreach. So massive snowfall in Boston. That kind of happening. It's not. I mean, it is seasonal, right? It happens in the winter, but a record snowfall is something that really is notable in and of itself, and is worthy of kind of potentially opening an email when you're doing your outreach. Same with Caitlyn Jenner, right? So this new kind of press and public awareness around, or renewed press and awareness around LGBT bullying could become a nice starting point for a conversation, or a justification for an email if you have content that could be bullying related. If you wanted to, if that was a topic direction you wanted to push in with for your website. So also we talk a lot and we think a lot at Citation Labs about being on missions with your content. So this does a few things. It helps you connect with linker valued audiences. We mentioned seniors, we mentioned bullied LGBT youth, perhaps snowbound homeowners would be another one potentially. But when you are working from a calendar, from a process or actual editorial calendar, you can really plan for these kind of these awareness days or these awareness months a lot more effectively, and really I would say experiment or explore what kind of a mission your company or your organization could be on. In addition to obviously providing great customer service and selling the best widget that exists on the market, but really trying to go a little bit deeper into who obviously you serve your marketplace, but you're also ideally able to contribute to people in need or groups in need with content, maybe with donations, possibly with donations, certainly with your efforts to raise awareness. And I think that again provides that sort of we call it justification, but I always think about it in terms of it's 6 o'clock. I'm helping my kids eat dinner. I've got a 2 and a 5-year-old, and then there's a knock at the door. you, you have a very, very short amount of time to justify why you're at my front door. And I think about the email, an email that we send in the same way is, what are we doing in the inbox? How do we justify this, and kind of connect as quickly as possible with someone in a cold. I mean, this is a cold email situation, right? So the mission, being on a mission, is one of those things, and ideally, it's a genuine mission, folks. I mean, we're not just pulling mission out of a hat. We certainly can and have done research to identify what are kind of some of the core missions that could exist, or the core audiences you could serve. But it's much better when it's something that is genuine and important to you or to your organization as a whole. But anyhow, I really feel like it helps with kind of content strategy for that can support link building, but also help support your brand kind of having a heart, kind of growing a heart, if you will. So this brings us to hack number 3, one of my favorite hacks, which is plan for experimentation, plan to have some time to be spontaneous. Now, a lot of we have a very let's try it kind of attitude. On the agency side, let's just sort of see what happens. And I think that's sort of culturally how we operate. That's not always viable or possible, and I recognize that. So I fear some of my listeners won't be able to necessarily follow through on all of this, but I hope some of the spirit of it you could try, even if you're in a larger company that where you might be looked upon as well. Let's just say new ideas aren't always embraced when they come out of the SEO department. So, and I know that that's the case. But anyhow, let's just jump in. We do plan for experimentation. More importantly, we make, when we have an idea, we build it into our kind of our timeline of execution, or our process for a given campaign. So here's some ways to crack open experimentation, right? So it doesn't just mean, think of any old idea and try it. It does, we do that. But it also means that you know all the rules, and then you deliberately experiment with their opposites. So a lot of these are kind of outreach based, but I think it's worthwhile going back and reading even your favorite link builder, Garrett French, or of course, but Eric Ward, John Cooper, Brian Dean, Ross Hudgens. Dig in and look through the linkarati.com. The guys at Page One Power have some great stuff. Read all of their rules, all of their laws, and then experiment with the opposite of that. Don't I'm not saying go out and buy links, but I am saying for every rule there is an exception. And a lot of times what happens is people are creating advice based on a niche, and they think that it's a universal advice. So we've found, for example, for a long time, I had read and believed that it was best to conduct outreach, if you're using a persona, for your outreach, to outreach as a woman, that females got higher response rates. We have found the opposite to be true, that it's actually males for us. Now, I don't know if that's because we're primarily we've really only reviewed that in outreach for links pages and resource pages. So, but and haven't tried it in the blog space or kind of the news space. But that's been our experience thus far, which is counterintuitive to what we had read and kind of believed for years, like 2 or 3 years, was just, this is how it's done, and this is so. Any assumptions you have, test them. try the opposite. Another great example. This isn't on this page. No, okay. Another great example is mailing on weekends. So in email marketing, everyone says mail on Tuesdays. We've found that we actually get decent response and a decent number of links go up on the weekends, on Saturdays, Sundays. When we send emails, then what we think is that it's the overachiever who's in the office on those days and clearing out their inbox, and it just happens to be a great day to get an email in an inbox. So again, we really, I don't think we deliberately experimented with that one. I think it was kind of like we get a, maybe it was a Hail Mary, like I hope we get some links on Saturday. You never know what'll happen. Let's send some emails. But so I wouldn't say that we deliberately experiment every time, but we also don't kind of follow rules that we don't necessarily have a basis for. So I think that's kind of important. And I would also, I think there's going to be regional kind of variations that would, blow some of these standard rules out of the water. There would be maybe cultural variations, certainly industry-oriented variations to these rules. If there's a industry where everybody took Tuesdays off, then that would be, of course, a horrible day to send mail. But I guess my point is, don't accept people don't know that their universal laws that they're suggesting might really only be niche laws. And so they're maybe not as clear or about where they learned what they learned. And so they think it's going to apply to all industries or all people, and it really was only true in one vertical, perhaps. That's not always the case, but be aware of kind of vertical blindness from your the experts that you're getting information from, and know that there could be some room to experiment. So definitely, try different. Always be looking for different campaign types, which again comes back to the prospector finding and defining new types of opportunities. Certainly for the link strategist and or link prospector to be involved outside of just the content side of things. If you can talk with the sales team and understand what constitutes a lead, if you're in B2B, then you could potentially be generating email lists for them to start kind of having conversations with potential customers. So the link strategist and certainly the link prospector have skill sets that push beyond just link building. Different languages. What happens when you work in different languages? This space we're experimenting with right now. And then certainly experiment again, people, with guest posting. I know we had guest post Armageddon, and there was people have essentially abandoned them, but there are some methodologies for being as safe and intelligent about it as possible, and they're still can provide value. So again, don't necessarily just believe what you read. Experiment for yourself. Let's see. Oh yeah, of course, outreach. Try different subject lines. What happens when you do branded outreach versus unbranded outreach? Man versus woman. Different tones, right? Like friendly or kind of transactional or sad or what have you. What kinds of tones could you potentially experiment with? Certainly the actual style of the not just the tone but the style of the outreach. What topics you're talking about in the email itself, and then days of the week. Always. Again, you don't get emails unless you don't get links unless you're outreaching. But there might be some methods that you could use in your vertical that could be effective. People ask us for templates a lot of times, but it's, and we do use templates, but they're specific to the vertical, specific to the niche, specific to the topic. So it really, you need to be tailoring your outreach to the topic and vertical that you're working in, not using someone else's template. So that's kind of a side hack, but certainly experiment with everything. Also pitch multiple resources. All right. I think there's a kind of a standard approach in link building, which is you're going to send an email and you're going to just pitch your own resource. I think it goes a long way. I think pitching multiple resources goes a long way to establishing your credibility and kind of a bit more helping you present yourself as a bit more altruistic and a bit more and having a bit more understanding of your vertical or of the topic area. So, you're acknowledging that your single article doesn't solve all the world's problems. It might be helpful to have a few other resources mentioned. And this is really more when you're doing links or resource page outreach. But certainly if you're doing kind of either PR or even guest posting, share the love. If there's a great resource, share it. When this is, you want your content to be in good company. And I think when you have a collection of potential resources that you're actually pitching, you are serving yourself really well at the end of the day. I think also if the other resources are genuinely of great quality, you're showing that you have discernment. You can discern what is good and what is not good content in this topic area. So I think it helps kind of position your own work as related or on the same level as the content you're suggesting. But then also it will it gives you that added credibility of, I'm not just trying to get a link to my website. I'm also trying to promote this topic in general.
Well, also, so Garrett, it's
that's at the core of pitching multiple resources. And I think kind of promoting, it helps in really kind of any method any kind of tactic you're doing, except probably link buying. But yeah, so we do definitely
the multiple resources can be about
promote any great content, including our own. So hack 4, put on your type A hat. And this is actually kind of tough, has been toughest for me, and has been why it's been so helpful to have a team working with me. But this is the getting organized side of things. So I've as a business person, as a strategist, I've never had problems with ideas. It's making them happen. And I think that this hack is for all those idea people out there who, like me, need a little bit of guidance and a little extra help. So we are talking about making a plan. The reason why we make a plan is so that we're actually able to execute and do the things that need to get done. And planning also means you're thinking in terms of tasks, what actually has to be done to get from point A to point B. So I think a big one that's often overlooked and often can be very kind of disruptive to a process is needing and requiring approval of a concept or a direction. So this also means, having clearly spelled out specs or concepts when you actually go to pitch things up the ladder. So it can be daunting. First of all, to have to pitch multiple times, a concept multiple times, and then kind of explain, kind of over and over the purpose of link building or the purpose of this, purpose of that. But anyhow, it happens, and you need to kind of understand ahead of time if there's going to be lots of approval, stages of approval required, whether that's for individual pieces of content, the concept itself, who we're pitching to. You need to learn all these things before you send a single email, so that you're have kind of prepared for these work stoppages or process stoppages. Who's going to actually publish the content? This is something, it's incredible, but you can get all the way to the on the agency side of things, you can get all the way to the point of, okay, here's the content, and then you don't really know who's going to be publishing it, or how to work with that person, or what their publishing schedule is, and you could potentially not learn these things until almost too late. And then, we can't really publish anything new to the blog for another 2 months. We're completely full. So that type of thing can happen. So you need to kind of be learning these elements of who you're working with and where you're working prior to execution. So who's waiting on who, I think is sort of what we're talking about, and is what I'm mentioning in the previous point is, who's waiting on, let's say, the strategist and the prospector come up with some content titles, and then someone has to approve those before the writer can write. So then the 2 of them get approved, 3 of them don't. 3 of them have to go back to the link prospector and the strategist to come up with some new titles, and the content writer can get started. There's, I guess what I'm getting at is that you just know your environment that you're working in as well as possible, and ask as many of these types of questions as you can, to questions that are fundamental to execution, fundamental to actually getting things done on someone's website. And then certainly when our kind of company or individual holidays, it's something you always have to work around. We just started working in France, and there's a big holiday coming up in August. Like in all of France, everybody takes August off, and so that you just kind of learn as you move forward. But these are the types of questions that I would venture to say that people, especially just starting out, may not have thought to ask. And so all of this kind of question asking and planning is is really going to help get links built. So plan for bottlenecks. And that's really the best way to sum up what I've been saying thus far. You're planning for what the bottlenecks are, where you're finding them, and figuring out ways either around them. In some cases, we've abandoned PR directions because there's oversight that's going to be confining and slow us down too much. So we'll kind of say, all right, we're just going to skip that. Or how about instead of contacting news sites, we'll just contact only blogs. And so but if you've talked to concept all the way through with the right people, you will find where those bottlenecks are prior to actually trying to execute and do anything. That's one of the most painful things. You're ready to actually start a campaign, and then absolute process stop because you forgot to check it out with somebody, or this person suddenly requires overview. And it's a reality, but find out where those things are. Find out who is going to be concerned, and then give them a place at the table ahead of time. Here is an example plan. So we did an article on this. I think it was a process calendar. The link building process calendar. It was a way of thinking about working at large scale. And this is from that. I'm not going to obviously read through this, but this is just sort of how we think about what work has to get done and where the approval stages are and who can be doing what during each one of these different stages. So here's that continued. So, it can be, guys, it can be weeks before you actually start sending emails to promote content. So that's something to be sort of preparing your bosses or your clients for, is that link building doesn't just start. You don't flip a switch and links go up. There's a lot of, and if you are outlining, if you create this type of outline for people, you're giving them that real visual sense of, oh, here's the work that's going on during this time that's going to be generating the links, but we have to do all this work in order to actually start earning links. I think it really helps people understand that, links aren't something you just flip on for a website. At least, I mean, I guess, technically they can be, but if you're working as organically and as to the guidelines as possible, to the Google guidelines, it's not something that happens overnight. So that's again, this is our outline, our plan outline on a week-by-week basis, with a bit of the team or the role kind of broken out. So just showing what the different, where and when the different roles are involved. So guys, here's your bonus hack. This is the one, it's kind of my favorite hack, but it's the one it really takes the longest to learn and the longest to implement and believe and know. But basically, link building can be a beautiful thing. And I think this goes back to, when you are breaking yourself out of the SEO dungeon, the SEO basement where you've been constrained, and really helping your company or your organization connect with a mission or with various aspects of the market that may have been overlooked. You're growing something new that really isn't just link building. And I think that's really, to some extent, obviously, you're probably getting graded. If you're like us, you're getting graded on the number and the quality of the links you're building. But if you're also able to define new directions for your company, I think that's really where you are, where and how link building is a beautiful thing. And it's honestly, I feel like one of the most overlooked aspects of link building. And it's certainly one of the toughest to kind of actualize or actually do, unless you're link building for a company where there's sort of a not as much hierarchy, or kind of a company that's a little more SEO first. And we've encountered these types of teams and types of organizations where SEO has a head, or has a place at the table, right, of the strategy table. And so that type of an organization, you can often better define new directions, be it content, be it product, be it mission, or what have you, and look for those kind of meaningful connections that you can forge, right? So that's the best sort of link building at its best, and it can be beautiful. I want to also kind of close with this thought that every relationship starts with outreach. All right, so there's so much, and this is one of the rules of link building that I would challenge, and I would ask you to challenge, which is that link building is all about relationships. I don't disagree with that, but also I know that people who run links pages, people who are running blogs, journalists, they're not looking for more relationships. They don't want a relationship. They've got enough. And if they are looking for a relationship or a new friend, then they're looking in the wrong place if they're looking in their inbox. So there is some element of schmooze or what have you that should be built into your efforts. But you're in a transactional landscape. You're in a transactional ecology, if you will. You are providing something of value, and so it's positioning that value in a way that is quickly discernible in an email, and then maybe a phone call would make sense. We've certainly made that offer in emails before, like, let us know, we'd love to hop on the phone with you to discuss more. And so, but most people don't want to do that. Most people don't want that relationship. That's not what comes first. Now, if we're talking about kind of slowly working, building up camaraderie or what have you with maybe a reporter in a space, maybe that starts to make sense. Certainly having some kind of brand credibility or having built your own personal brand in a vertical can really help you. But at the end of the day, when you're sending kind of cold emails, whether for a guest posting or links page requests, or you want to sponsor an event someplace, these are all transactions that are built around value, and it's conveying the value of your offer that's the most important thing, not the relationship. So that's but that's a belief. So I want everybody, that's one of my beliefs. So I want you to challenge that. Don't trust it. But anyhow, when you are in that first touch scenario, you certainly can warm up that first touch with having a relevant pitch, building your mission in. We're on a mission to improve or increase or add, and not your company, but people who are in need, or not your boss, trying to make your boss more money. You're really trying to help the internet in some way. And then certainly responsiveness to events, or kind of what's happening on the internet in general, or not on the internet, but in the news, in the world, in the real world in general, are good things to be building into your outreach. And these all go a long way to getting response and beginning conversations, which is actually where a relationship can start, is once that conversation has begun. So folks, that's it for this, our agency hacks 2. We again, we have really been working towards calendars and plans, and thinking with lots of moving parts, thinking about campaigns with lots of moving parts. And that has driven us towards this documented outline of effort. And I feel like if that's the one thing you take away from this, is to spell everything out clearly, spell out tasks very clearly, that you're going to be a long way towards executing link building at a scale and that's going to really add value to your company, whether that's through increased search rankings, or new business partnerships, or through kind of brand building in your marketplace. Megan, have I left anything out today? Was there anything that you can remember from our conversations that I really wanted to get put forth?
I think we got most things. The only thing I was going to add in is when we were talking about pitching multiple resources.
I don't think so. I'm guessing no, and hoping that the webinar has been recording. But folks, that wraps it for today. So I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar.